Growing Up Weird.
Hi, and welcome to Growing Up Weird, the podcast where we explore how the earliest chapters of Western childhoods shape the health stories that we then carry into our adulthoods. I'm Dr. Greg Dickens, scientist and consultant in medical innovation, and I am here with Dr. Gwen Bradbury.
Hello.
Who is a healthcare researcher, author, and your guide through the science, stories, and traditional strategies that connect childhood beginnings to lifelong good health. Each week, we dig into the newest evidence, understand how it links together, and walk through some of the changes that we in the West could make to give kids decades of better health. So, whether you're a parent, a teacher, a healthcare professional, or simply curious about how the body and brain develop over time, you're in the right place. Are you ready? Have you got a cup of tea? Good. We begin, as ever, with the news. Guinevere, have you got news?
I do. I have 4 papers that actually we're just going to talk about together because they are a series.
A meta-review news.
Yep.
Meta-news review.
Something like that.
Never mind the meta. Okay. Good. I also have news.
Do you want to go first? I always go first.
Well, I want to know. We're recording this very near the end of November. Mm-hmm. And yet it's due for release somewhat near Christmas.
Yep.
Should we do festive news? Should we try and dress up our news a little festively?
Oh, yes.
Come on,
absolutely.
Then. Christmas yours up.
Okay, all right. So, at Christmas, actually, this is a fact I haven't checked because you've suddenly put me on the spot about festive news, but apparently Christmas Day, I think, is one of the very few days in the year when many more people than usual actually get the number of vegetables that they're supposed to eat. Isn't that cool?
That's amazing.
So actually, hopefully, people are going to be listening and being like, oh, your news about ultra-processed food, Gwen. I've just had my Christmas dinner and I can tell you there were vegetables.
I love that. Sprouts saving the nation.
Absolutely.
Incredible. Oh, okay, on the back of that beautiful festive fact, what's your other news?
Okay, so I am talking about a series of 3 papers that came out in the Lancet, which is a really big medical journal, today, which is going to be a month ago when you're listening to this at Christmas. But they were looking at the links between ultra-processed food and health. Mm-hmm. And they were investigating 3 major hypotheses. One, that consumption of the Western diet, which is very high in ultra-processed food, mm-hmm. is displacing long-established diets that were about whole foods and cooking, and is instead pivoting towards much higher consumption of ultra-processed food. So the first hypothesis was that ultra-processed food is displacing whole foods. Mm-hmm. The second hypothesis is that when people eat more ultra-processed food, their diet's generally worse, especially around chronic disease prevention.
Okay.
And then the third was that when you eat a lot of ultra-processed food, it increases the risk of loads and loads of diet-related chronic disease. Now, You're probably thinking, yes, Gwen, this is super obvious. Haven't we just had like 100 studies looking at this? Yes, we have. But this is looking at the evidence from those 100 studies and testing those 3 hypotheses.
Just purely those 3?
Purely those 3 hypotheses. But it has been a very large review, and that is why it's had a lot of media coverage. And I think what's really interesting is that, I hadn't realised that they substantiate each of these hypotheses. So the evidence supports each of these hypotheses. Mm-hmm. I hadn't realised there have been more than 100 prospective studies looking at ultra-processed food versus whole food intake. And those studies have found evidence of damage to virtually every organ system. So,
that's grim.
There are lots of controversies around ultra-processed foods. Is the classification exactly right? What if, there are a couple of foods that are ultra-processed that could be good for health? There's a lot of kind of, picking at the edges.
Yeah, there's a lot of edge cases.
But what I would say is that we have a huge amount of evidence. And I think the really big piece here is the displacement of whole foods. Mm-hmm. We've talked about it before in the snacking podcast and in our articles there. But one of the huge problems is not, actually even last week on the salt podcast as well. But it's having a little bit of this food occasionally is probably okay. But when it is displacing all the best parts of your diet for your health, mm-hmm. even if it was, not too bad for health, it's going to have a negative impact. But the impact is greater than that.
Wow, okay.
So and what I thought was interesting is the first paper was looking at these 3 hypotheses. The second paper was looking at kind of the problems around it, and the third was looking at solutions. And I thought what was interesting is when they were looking at the solution space, they said, clearly, whenever you talk about ultra-processed food, people bring up equity. They bring up, how do we make sure that any policy doesn't affect people who are facing more hardship than others anyway, because typically people in poverty eat more ultra-processed foods. Typically the burden of cooking often falls on women.
No.
So there's like a gender equality piece as well. So they raise all of these questions. But I think for me the interesting part is that the paper said the fundamental thing we need to do is redirect subsidies away from transnational companies.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
Which
really aiming at the core there.
Exactly. It was just very clear. I think a lot of papers, they talk about, we should be doing this, we should be educating more, taxation, which certainly they talk about as a component of the solution. But the big thing that they talk about is redirecting agricultural subsidies from large transnational companies towards small scale, local, affordable, minimally processed foods and meals that are convenient and appealing to consumers. And that is a big ask.
Okay, yeah. That feels like a game theory impossibility given who does the lobbying in the US.
Well, exactly. I know. I think it goes, you read it and you think, I think that goes beyond food. That goes to the whole political system, right?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Where was this paper from?
Lancet.
Okay, so, yeah, but hang on, that's a British journal, but was it a British research group?
I think it involved people who were involved in the Nova classifications. That's Brazil.
Yeah.
But I think it was a pretty global set of authors.
Okay, yeah. Oh, then I laud their hopefulness when it comes to the US, and I praise their reality when it faces the EU and Japan.
Yes. I think my feeling was that this was definitely not a US specific paper. In fact, it was very much, from countries which have had more success in lobbying in reducing ultra-processed food consumption. They are coming from a different place.
That's cool.
But anyway, I thought we'd cover it briefly because it's been on a lot of major news sites, and it's just really interesting to see how much evidence there is that the vast majority of these foods are net damaging to health.
Yeah, that is interesting. Oh, okay, yeah. Definitely get your sprouts in.
Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully you really enjoyed your Christmas dinner.
Okay. Well, I've been desperately trying to listen to you and think of an interesting festive fact to go with mine. And, the best I've got is in California. Well, I'm not entirely sure where Harvard is. It's the East Coast, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely East Coast.
East Coast, studying people in California.
Okay.
Showed that over 60%, 62% of people said that they found their holiday time in the US, they call it the holiday time, as most of you will know, being US based, they said their stress level was very or somewhat elevated during the holidays, with 10% going so far to say it is the most stressful time of the year. Oh. The happiest time of the year. I believe there's a UK study that said in the UK that's over 50%. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty terrifying. But luckily, my news relates to that.
Fantastic! Festive fact and link. I love it.
Anyway, so Dr. Hikaru Mochizuki Kawai et al., who are from Japan's NARO, the National Agriculture and Food Research Organization, moderately well-known NARO, if you're into studying nutrition in Japan, publishing in Scientific Reports 3 days ago, looked at the idea of inoculating against stress. Now, a lot of us will be familiar with this. Gwen, I know you've written on it in the past, the idea that your response to stress is a U-shaped curve based on how much stress you had as a kid.
Yeah.
So if you had a lot of stress as a kid and you get stress as an adult, you will react very strongly, or you'll have a very strong response that looks like nothing, which is learned helplessness.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
If you had no stress as a kid and you are faced with stress as an adult, you will have a very strong response because you haven't learned to deal with it. But in the middle, there's a golden zone, the bottom of this U-shaped graph, which is if you faced a little bit of nice stress that didn't last very long as a kid, you are more likely to show a less catastrophic response to stress in adulthood. Now, this has been tested again and again and again in rats and monkeys. It hasn't been longitudinally studied in people, and I'm here to tell you that it still hasn't, which is very sad.
I was going to say, didn't we a little while ago have one where they suggested there was a sweet spot of age of stress in children that was good? I remember that paper.
Very good, yes. That's been done, but the amount of stress has not been done.
Right, thresholds, okay.
Because you can't stress out children deliberately. It's not considered good form.
Imagine that's hard to get past an ethics review.
Yeah. My plan, everybody, is to stress out 6-year-olds. But no, what you can do is stress out rats. That's fine. And so that's what these folks did. They bought a bunch of young 6-week-old rats and they stressed them out. But previously, when this work has been done, it has shown that stressing them out using a thing called the environmental stress matrix makes them more responsive to stress. So what these folks did is tone that down a bit.
Yeah.
They got rid of the things that are actually painful. They got rid of all the things that invoke actual hunger or thirst. And they got rid of temperature stress.
Okay.
They left in waking up to find out that your entire house is on a wonk.
Oh, that would be really stressful.
Right?
Okay, yeah.
Waking up to find out there are 3 more people in your house who also don't know why they're there.
Oh, no.
Waking up to find that your bed is wet. I know, so sad.
That's really sad.
And a couple of similar things. A loud noise, but not painfully loud, just irritating loud. Anyway, they showed that rats exposed to this have, as you might expect, because I think they tried a few things, have a less violent, or they show less stress in adulthood when presented with the same stressors.
Yeah.
Right? But here's the fun thing. They also showed that if you don't do this, and these tiny little ratlings aren't given their stress inoculation, you can repair their stress response by messing with the microbiome.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
So they gave them a species of lactococcus, and that then brought the stress response of these non-stress inoculated adults closer to normal.
Cool.
So they didn't spend ages huddling away from other rats. They did spend more time in the central meeting area. They did spend more time grooming. All of those little markers of I'm a rat having a nice time. I know, they're so cute.
They're so cute.
But there we go. I just thought that was quite interesting because we talk so much about how important it is to set things up properly in childhood. But if you're a rat, at least, and I'm sure there's hundreds of ways to do this for humans, there are ways to repair some of not getting a perfect upbringing. And in this particular way, one of those is bacteria.
I mean, that's fantastic. And I guess the other thing it makes me think is that, you know, actually you can't control all the parts of your life that are going to change. You have no idea what's coming. There are so many things that could go wrong. But almost for me, it makes me think about the importance of setting children up to eat a very diverse diet, because you know, even that is one thing that you definitely can control at the beginning, which means that hopefully you have happier microbes. So actually, whatever the stresses that come along, you've got a body that is more resilient to dealing with it.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
There you go. I thought you'd like that. Okay. Quasi-festive news out of the way. Let's talk about your article.
Yeah.
Folks, I hope everybody's read the article. I certainly have. I'm going to do my best to ask pertinent questions here. Please tell me if I get them wrong in the comments. Guinevere, what is wrong with the movement of women in labour?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to labour the point of birthing in a stable, but if we think about how mammals want to birth, the major problem is that the way that we support humans who are birthing is very far removed from what mammals need.
Okay. For people who haven't seen your excellent talk, is it Mammals, Midwifery and Maternity? Or is
very
it
good. I'm impressed you remember the alliteration.
Yeah,
good.
I know my 3 M's. Can you go through what mammals want? What is it mammals want to give birth?
So, in order for the normal hormonal processes of labour, birth and breastfeeding to happen as they should, you need to have a very complex and sophisticated series of hormonal changes, which kind of go up and go down, and they move absolutely in sync to drive all of the behaviours you need on this very complex biological journey. But because the journey is so complex, small differences, small outside influences can have a major effect on how those hormones are working together.
Because of all the cascades and things.
Because of all the cascades.
Okay.
By cascades, Greg means that one thing can set off another thing, which can set off another couple of things, and you can end up with an effect that's really great from something that was very small right at the beginning.
Exactly that. Thank you.
So what happens is the way that mammals ensure that the hormonal responses happen as they should, I say ensure, nothing is ever certain, but set them up as well as possible, is to find somewhere where they are safe and they are not disturbed, and the only things in their environment are things that are familiar.
Okay.
So there's no stress, which is the absolutely critical part here.
Okay, that leaves me with a couple of questions. One is, why is stress so bad in this situation?
Stress releases a hormone called adrenaline, which is part of our body's fight and flight mechanism. And in the very early stages of labour, you want to have as low a fight and flight response as possible, because you need to have this gradual building up of the contractions. Then, once the cervix is fully dilated, you really want a lot of noradrenaline, because it helps to get you ready for birth. But if you have adrenaline or noradrenaline early in the process, it stops you kind of getting started, so you actually never get to the point where you are about to give birth.
Okay, and I think I didn't get this at the time, but we've both seen that in animals giving birth, right? It looks like a very deliberately built-in system that if the place you thought was safe and you're about to give birth, the place you thought was safe turns out to not be safe, it's nice to have a break.
Yeah, absolutely.
And by break, I mean handbrake, not a Kit Kat.
Yeah. Did you ever go and watch a foaling when you were at vet school?
Of course.
Yeah. Were you told to go in there with a light and make sure that the horse was
really,
doing what you were
symbols.
supposed to do?
You have to announce your arrival, or the horse doesn't know you're there.
Not loudly on the stable door.
You have to have a kazoo, I've heard. No, I was told to stay very, very, very quiet on pain of death.
Yeah.
And if I could watch over the door, then do so.
Yeah. And if the mare stopped what she was doing, would it be her fault or would it be your fault?
It would absolutely be my fault, and I was told that at the beginning.
Yeah. And this is what blew my mind when I found out that, women have failure to progress, and they believe that their bodies, their bodies weren't doing the right thing, and that, that's kind of the message that is received by these women, that their bodies are the ones at their fault. And you think, no, my friends, everybody around you are the ones who are to blame here.
So, to answer the question specifically then, stress is bad because it shuts down labour.
Yeah.
And the modern world is full of it.
Yes. Not just the modern world, but the way, the place that we help women to give birth, we encourage women to give birth in Western cultures.
Okay. Is it just the stress of being moved?
So it's a really great question. And actually it comes back to the cascade that you talked about earlier.
Yeah.
The fact that a very small thing early on in a process can have absolutely massive effects at the bottom. Oh gosh, that's a sorry. Don't laugh.
Sorry.
But so for many women, the first point where they are kind of doing an intervention in labour, or they're doing something that is counter to their body's normal processes, is leaving a familiar space and going to somewhere that is unfamiliar.
Okay, yeah.
And so that is why this article is about that transport in labour, because it's the first step, and it is the gateway to going into an environment that is absolutely at odds with what your body needs to have a physiological birth.
Okay, then, 2 ways to go with this. One is, how can we get it right? The other way is, what's so important about physiological birth?
I think we should talk briefly about the latter. A physiological birth is important for 2 reasons.
Hang on. I've set you up poorly here. What is a physiological birth?
A physiological birth is a birth in which the hormones of birth work in the way that they should to set up all of the processes that the mother and baby need for the best start for that baby for life.
Okay, so it's just a medical phrase for all of those hormone loops and cascades do the things they're set up to do, and you get all your adrenaline at the right time, and your prolactin and your oxytocin, and all in the amounts and at the times your body's expecting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So I'd say it was different from, because normal and natural birth are very loaded terms.
Sure.
This is more, it just says your body is doing the things that your body has evolved to do.
Sure. And if you end up with a cesarean section at the end,
Yep.
you ended up with a cesarean section at the end.
Exactly, yeah.
But your hormone loops are all doing their thing.
Exactly, yeah.
Understood. All right. So that's what physiological birth is. Why is it important?
It's important because it sets the baby up to have the hormones about 24 hours before labour starts that protect its brain from oxygen deprivation.
Okay.
It's important because it allows the baby to get the microbes from its mother. It's important because it allows the baby to calibrate its stress response, so even in adulthood it will be less stressed. It's important for the mother because it allows her to have a good experience of birth. It's important for the mother because it sets up all of her hormones for breastfeeding. It helps her with the brain remodeling and the nervous system changes that come with having a baby. It sets her up for not tearing, for not having a lot of pain, for not having post-traumatic stress. I mean, it's actually hard to think of something that it's not good for. It is absolutely critical for the mother and baby's first months.
Right. That's a hell of an answer. Okay. Why then is it not standard practice to push for sorry.
No, I'm sorry. This one is loaded with euphemisms.
Yeah. Oops. Why then is it not standard practice to set women up to have physiological births?
I honestly think it is a weird evolution problem. Let me explain what I mean. So for, millennia, women birthed in warm, quiet, safe, comfortable places, either alone or with familiar others, right?
Yeah.
So this all happened. And then about 60, 70 years ago, because birth had moved out of the hands, so to speak, of midwives who were trying to get physiological birth to work, into the hands of doctors who had many different tools to enable women to give birth or have babies taken from them, however it goes. It was then much more efficient to have women coming to hospitals rather than doctors going out into the community, which meant that there was a big kind of endeavour to get women coming to hospitals, which meant that initially, because of how hospitals were set up and because of how women knew the people who were helping them, the difference in their ability to give birth was not so obvious. But by the time everyone was in hospital and birth started getting harder, resources became more limited, so there were fewer people to help. And so you then got this kind of gradual slide into worse and worse and worse and worse experiences and more and more and more and more overstretched healthcare systems. But because you're kind of continually evolving from where you are, you get into a place that is not nearly as good as it could be if you just step back and said, right, how would we build this system from scratch? Does that make sense?
It does. Although I think there's another thing that's got its thumb on the scale here. Mm-hmm. I completely agree that stepwise evolution from midwives who seem to know what they were up to and obstetricians who kind of didn't 80 years ago. However, other branches of medicine have done similar things and ended up in weird places, but brought themselves back by following the evidence. I think a significant issue we have here is that testing for hormones is hard work. Testing for picomolar concentrations of hard to check hormones, which are only there for fractions of a minute, is a right nightmare.
Yeah.
So people tend to do birth studies based on outcomes rather than based on processes.
Yeah.
They don't look at whether you're having a physiological birth. They look at whether or not you had a tear.
Yeah.
They look at whether or not you had a C-section.
Yeah.
And you can't assess the quality of what you're doing and the effect it's having on people's physiology in that way.
Yeah.
I mean,
Because
you can, but it's five
it's
steps
really hard.
removed.
Yeah, and I think one thing I want to clarify, given what you said about physiological birth, a C-section, you can be set up absolutely perfectly,
Yep.
and you might get all of the way up to finding that your baby is in the wrong position and that there is no way that baby is coming out of you in that shape, in that orientation. And that's why C-sections are so important, but you'll have had all the steps up to that.
Yeah.
Similarly, you might have had an induction, you might have been in a very stressful environment, you might have spent 3 days labouring because there are not enough staff, you might have then ended up with a C-section, but although the outcome is the same, what has happened to that mother and that baby can look wildly different.
The outcome on paper may be the same, but the
Yeah.
outcome in long-term health is going to be utterly different.
I think another problem is that the research into birth has only really started after hospital births were the norm. So no one asked the right question. There is no
Interesting.
baseline. And the vast majority of obstetricians have never seen a physiological birth, so they've got no idea what they're aiming for.
That's mad.
I know. Especially with YouTube, if anyone
I can't
hasn't
believe
looked
I've
up.
never seen. The vast majority of obstetricians have never seen a physiological
When would
birth.
they have done?
That's mad.
Yeah.
They need to
Can you
come and watch a
imagine-
foaling.
I know.
All obstetricians should watch foaling or
Yeah.
whelping or something.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, and it's not their fault at all. There's just no part in their clinical training that is like, you need to be hiding outside someone's window. You need to be watching these YouTube videos. That's just not part of the training.
That's mad. That's
Because
blowing my
realistically,
mind.
obstetricians are not supposed to be. They're not supposed to be the gatekeepers to birth. They're supposed
No,
to be the
but
ones who are
they
there when
are.
things go wrong. But the problem is they're having to do all of them because it goes wrong pretty much all
they
the time.
are the ones who are there when things go wrong.
Yeah.
Because they're there.
Yeah.
Okay. Before I get too highfalutin and rootin' and tootin' and other words that mean
Oh,
annoyed.
system.
Oh my god. There needs to be a link between the vet school and the med school where all people who want to be obstetricians have to go and watch at least one animal give birth. Fascinating. Okay. We have talked about why physiological birth is important.
Yeah.
Why moving women in labour shuts it down.
Yeah.
We haven't yet said what you can do to fix it.
Yeah.
Want to?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there are, as we've just been railing about, there are some huge systemic factors at play. And we're really, talking a lot about the UK. In the US, I think it's even harder because there's no culture, well, there's very much smaller culture of midwifery. In the UK, I think it's a legal requirement to have a midwife at every birth. But in the US, midwives are much, much less common. So the situation is even more different over there. So there are lots of things we could do to think about how you might change things at a systemic level. But at a personal level, the one thing that I would really recommend that people do is to think very, very, very hard about what it would take for them to have a baby at home. Because I sort of feel like it's a no-brainer. It's never offered to women, and I'm not quite sure why, because every woman I know with a first baby who said, or a second baby who said, I might have a home birth in the UK, people have been like, great, what a lovely idea, let us introduce you to the team.
What a great plan.
But it's never kind of offered, which is very strange.
That's weird.
But as soon as you choose a home birth, it's like one of these little cascade things where you make a single little decision at the beginning, and then some other things start to happen because you start to think, oh gosh, what am I going to do? How am I going to set things up? What do I need to know? So you then suddenly, because you make a slightly countercultural decision, you then become much more invested and interested in what's happening to your body and what is going to happen. And just that alone is backed up by the evidence, because if you plan to have a home birth, you have better outcomes regardless of whether you birth at home or in hospital. So that is one piece, which is just you've started to invest more and to think more about what is going on. The second piece is that you have a midwife with you from the time that they think they need to be there. So you never have to make a decision about when to go to a hospital because you have such good care, certainly in the UK. So your midwife comes out, she's with you. If there is a problem, she will tell you to go to hospital. If there's no problem, she will just be there looking after you, just you. She's not spread between 7 other women, it's literally just you. And the third piece, which is something that is really hard to understand if you haven't given birth before, is that as soon as you enter a medical setting, you lose your ability to control the situation. Things happen to you. Things are done to you. Things are presented as a request when they are actually a choice. But if you stay at home, you retain much more of the control you have, which is great for your hormones and great for your ability to manage yourself. But it also means that much less is done to you, which means that you're much lower risk of having unnecessary interventions or a feeling that you have been traumatized in some way because things have been done to you without your consent. So those would be my three reasons why you might want right at the beginning to think about choosing a home birth.
That was great, Gwen. I am staggered that I've never realised that most obstetricians have never seen a physiological birth. And for anybody just tuning in, physiological basically means hormonally normal.
Hormonally normal. So if it was called hormonally normal, I think it'd be much easier for people to understand. I'm going to start referring to it as hormonally normal birth from now on.
Oh, there you go.
It's great.
Yeah, and given that birth is a hormonal process, having a birth that is hormonally normal is seriously important.
Yeah, it makes it much easier to see what's important.
There you go. But yeah, wow. Solid intervention like that. That's interesting. That's the way forward. I really hope this becomes systemic.
I think all we can do is just help people to make individual decisions. Then at some point the system can change with that.
Wow. Dystopian.
It is dystopian, isn't it? I mean, we just talk about ultra-processed food. I feel like we're just railing against massive systems, and all we're saying is, this is not free choice. Yeah, but if you have any degree of any kind of choice, maybe make this choice.
This is not your fault, here's some things you can do.
Exactly.
Okay. Talking of not your fault, have you got any listener or reader questions we can blame on?
I do have. I've got a really good listener question, which is in one of your recent podcast episodes, you talked about smoothies not being as good as eating whole fruit. Now, I'm sure I've seen smoothie adverts that claim that fibre isn't broken down by smoothies.
Okay. Yeah.
So what exactly is going on here?
It's an utter lie for a start.
Well, depends. I mean, it is.
Depends
so
what you mean by broken down.
It depends what you mean by broken down. So if you think about... So fibre is polysaccharide chains that are not broken down until they get to the large intestine.
Carbohydrate, to be clear.
Sorry,
here for people who
chains.
aren't biochemists.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So the question is there are kind of different elements. There's what kind of fibre is in something, and is that fibre going to be damaged by a blender? But there's also how is that fibre arranged? What is the structure of that fibre? And that is where the difference comes in. And that's because fibre doesn't exist as a kind of, if we think about a fruit, it's not just a mixture of sugar and some little bits of fibre and something like some water just in a kind of sludge. Can
I chuck an analogy at this question?
Yeah, do an analogy.
An analogy here. That's like putting a car through a blender and then saying, oh, but the steel hasn't been broken down.
Exactly, yeah.
No, of course it hasn't been broken down. It's just in a million small pieces. It doesn't work as a car anymore.
Yes, exactly. Thank you very much. That is a really good analogy. Yes. So when you blend your car, you might not change the quantity of steel in it, but you are going to very much change what that steel can do.
Sure.
And it's the same with fibre, because the fibre exists around the cells of plants and plant structures. As we chew, when we cook things, when we chew things, we break up a proportion, or we change slightly a proportion of those cell walls, but most of them stay holding on to the stuff inside. So then that stuff goes down into our stomach, moves around a little bit, goes into our small intestine. Yes, some of our enzymes can munch away on the bits that have been released, but a lot of it is still in these cell structures, which are really, really resistant to digestion. So they go all the way down to our colon, and our microbes have a field day. And the important thing is that the microbes, when those whole cells get down to the colon, those microbes can have access to all of the stuff that is still inside those cells. If you have shredded up a lot of your cells, then the body will have absorbed a lot of the nutrients, a lot of the sugar and water. Sugar and starches and proteins, etc. Whereas if they are still in their cell structures, those will be going down to feed the microbes. And the more different nutrients you have in your colon, the more diverse your gut microbiome.
Yeah. Can I add something to
Yeah,
that?
of course.
So you're talking a lot about the health of the colon.
Yeah.
And why not mashing up your fibre is important for the health of the colon.
Yeah,
and I think
great.
that's important.
Yeah.
But I also think there's a flip side to this, which is the health of the liver.
Yeah.
So you're talking about plant cells here, which, as you've just said, have got sugar and interesting nutrients and funky little organelles in them. And if you put those in a blender and you mash them all up, then you basically just have sugar, organelle, protein, fat soup with bits of broken up cell membrane in. If you put that in the small intestine, the entire contents of all of those cells goes whoop through the wall, whoop through the bloodstream, smashes into the liver like, I believe your analogy was a freight train in your book.
Yeah.
The liver cannot handle all of that sugar, all of those nutrients arriving all at the same time. It's just not built for it. It's built to have a little bit released when you chew and a little bit broken open in the stomach and a little bit picked apart through the 12 hours of the small intestine until, some is left to go to the large intestine and the liver's had a nice little trickle feed from this stuff all the way through. Smashing them all open, smashing it all into the liver in one go is a great way to get non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And that's no fun at all. It's bad for you and it can kill you.
Yeah. I mean, going up even further upstream, the more, if you blend up a load of fruit, you can eat more fruit as well. So there's you also can have a higher quantity of sugar coming out.
True.
But also, when you mash stuff into a real puree, it goes through your stomach much faster, so it makes you feel less full. So then you may even consume more.
Oh, you want to go further upstream? Further upstream? Let's do this.
Do teeth.
Yeah.
Oh, God, let's do teeth
you
as well.
blend open the fruit cells. What are you doing? You're dropping the pH of the solution a really long way. Chewing up an apple is nowhere near as bad for your teeth as drinking apple puree. Anyway, okay, I can't go any further upstream.
No, I think by that point we're kind of going back to the tree. But I guess the point is it's not necessarily intuitive as to why a smoothie might be different from a whole fruit, because if you take an entire fruit and stick it in your blender, you could be thinking, it's quite justified to think
this is
the same thing, but it's not, because our bodies see things at different scales, and the structure of a food is really, really important. So going back to the ultra-processed food discussion right at the beginning, one of the major problems with ultra-processed food is that they are the epitome of a sludge. They are lots of powders and liquids mixed together without internal structures, which means that they fall apart very, very quickly. And that they affect your digestion, microbiome, etc. Which is why whole fruits are the way to go.
Yeah, I love that. Well, that was fantastic. Thank you very much, Guinevere, for talking to me. Not that you have a choice, we live together. Thank you, everybody else, for listening to us. I have been Dr. Greg Dickens.
And I'm Dr. Gwen Bradbury.
And this has been Growing Up Weird. Bye.
Bye, and happy holidays.
Oh, yeah, that as well. Hey.